All right, welcome everyone. I'm Sophie Alexander from the Nutritional Wellness Center, and I'm talking tonight about metabolism liver, smarter way to reset. And I'm excited about this topic because I have been working with folks with nutrition and particularly with this technique of nutrition response testing. Um, Gosh, we're getting on for 15 years now. And I see the liver as a major pattern for folks, especially when it comes to women, especially when it comes to women in more perimenopause and menopause age. Um, and it's almost a component for everyone who is struggling with weight management. But it's really a majorly overlooked window into hormone balance. Um, and I'm going to start getting into more of that. Um, so make sure I'm working my controls right. All right. Well, particularly being January, being right after this holiday season, the sugar season, as I like to call it, and alcohol season, um, this is a time where I particularly see folks struggle. Um, and it can be a time where people are not feeling like they can bounce back like they felt like they used to in the past. I especially hear this from women clients as they get older, as they get past their 40s. Um, and so, yeah, after the holidays, it's a common struggle, right? There's more low energy, more carbohydrate cravings, more bloating. People are just feeling more stuck overall, right? And I do find that the hormonal shifts, as I already said, really amplify this. And so I want people to understand more about the liver connection in all of this, so you can understand why things are getting so bogged down and what you can do about it. So I'm really going to be talking more about the theme tonight of what's true metabolic health, right? So it's beyond just how you weigh, how you weigh, um, even beyond just looking at body composition numbers, right? We really want to understand how the systems are working efficiently, and yeah, because when they're working more efficiently at these foundational ways that we see with metabolic balance, right, where you have stable blood sugar response, your body's making energy efficiently in your cells, in your mitochondria, then the hormones are going to be balancing themselves better. The body's going to be managing metabolism better and weight management so much better. And your liver really sets the pace for this. Um, and it plays a huge role in digestion of fats with your flow of bile. And it plays a big role with sugar balance because it's any excess sugar that you have that your body's not able to use immediately, right? It gets stored in the liver as glycogen and gets ready to be broken down later when you're fasting or when you're not eating. Or if you don't ever need those stores, it's just going to be what's what then stores it as fat. And so really paying attention to the liver is huge for um, any kind of monitoring of diabetes risk, right? And it just becomes more and more important as we're getting older and the hormonal shifts are putting more of a burden on the body, and we start to see more insulin resistance and more stubbornness of weight management. So the liver's role is diverse, right? A lot of people have some awareness. They're like, oh yeah, alcohol's hard on the liver, or um, but they don't realize that the liver, yes, plays a role in digestion, as I mentioned. It makes bile, and bile is what we use to digest fats. But that bile route of the body is what we also use to clean out toxins. We put the toxins into the bile, and the bile is put into the gut. And then when we have a bowel movement, it's moved out of the body. Um, and we also put excess hormones into the bile to be cleared out of the body. And so if the liver's not working efficiently, there can be digestive stress, and you can see that in terms of bloating and weight gain. But a big component of it is really the excess hormones, that the hormones are not getting cleared properly, and they're recirculating, which is then unfortunately leads to a liver buildup where there's just even more congestion in the liver. And typically around the holidays, right, there's some short-term overeating, especially short-term overeating of sugars and carbohydrates. And then there is more alcohol usage often too. And so this leads to some rapid liver fat buildup, which contributes to insulin resistance, makes it more stubborn of your body to actually take the sugars into your cells, break them down for energy. And this liver fat buildup, it really is at the root of a lot of metabolic dysfunction, and it can happen quickly. Even as we're just talking about, yeah, post-holiday season, but then it takes a while for the system to catch back up. And if you throw in the fact that there's already a history of poor bile flow, um, and then there's a history of the poor estrogen clearance, particularly. I was going to say hormone clearance overall, but estrogen particularly. Then you're just going to see the liver get even more sluggish, and we start to have this real cycle that that builds over time and over the years. So yeah, I was just starting to talk about estrogen. So the hormone piece of it. When hormones shift, especially pre and post menopause, the estrogen decline can really hit some bodies hard. It's very common with menopause because of these changes that there's like increased visceral fat in the body, increased insulin resistance, increased liver strain. And people would say, oh gosh, I mean, we have less estrogen. It should be easier. But because of these changes, I just feel like things slow down and the liver pathways become more sluggish. And so it just becomes harder um, for the body to manage this balance, especially when there's the increased insulin resistance. And a lot of this comes from the cortisol imbalances as well. So cortisol are your stress hormones. They're made in the adrenal glands, or it's one of your stress hormones, excuse me, it's made in the adrenal glands. Um, and for most people, it can trend higher than it's meant to on a regular basis, right? It's meant to spike for acute stress situations, but for a lot of folks, it is just high all the time. And this leads to more cravings. This leads to more insulin resistance. Um, and so we start seeing um, that this further perpetuates the hormone imbalances, but it's also another hormone that the liver really has to work on clearing. And if the bile flow is not doing well, that affects how the microbiome, all the balance of the good and bad bugs in your gut, how those guys are breaking down the hormones and helping to clear them as well. And there's really important gut signaling that happens that tells us, how hungry we are, how much food we need, how much cravings, um, and what the body's looking for. And when these gut signals get thrown off, that's when what was called our natural GLP-1 starts to dip. And I think GLP-1 is being talked about a lot these days with these new drugs that are out, the Ozempic and Wegovy and Zepbound, right? They all have lots of different names, but they are all different forms of what are called these GLP-1 antagonists, which they push on the receptors of the GLP-1s in the gut. And a lot of folks are, excited about it as an option of a quick way to start seeing weight loss. And I have done a whole nother talk about GLP-1, so I don't want to go too much down that rabbit hole today. But it's been just coming up more and more when people are feeling stuck, right? And I have to say my piece that I really have seen in some cases, especially some diabetic clients, where the GLP-1s really did change up their blood sugar management and really did get that person out of some stubborn insulin resistance that they had already been trying with either intermittent fasting or with really carefully watching their diet. So I have seen folks where it was a game changer. But I do have a lot of concerns about these drugs, especially with the lack of longer term usage, the fact that I've had clients try to go off them and really struggle, um, some of the side effects of how it affects digestion, and often also the baseline fact that you still got to do all the other work. And there are people who are on these drugs who are not doing the other work. And what I mean by that is prioritizing protein, making sure you're not losing muscle mass, yeah, doing weight resistance work, eating a nutrient dense building diet, right, that helps the body clean and detoxify. And a lot of people who are on these drugs are not getting support with the detoxification process either, which often part of the reason their bodies were so stubbornly holding on to fat is because there's toxins stored in those fat cells. And then they start forcing the body to release those fat cells and break that down. And then they're not getting any help with all the waste that is suddenly flooding their system. And I think that's part of why people can have such really hard side effects. So I think there's a way that they can be done well, and then I also think there's a way they can really be done poorly. But I'm all about how can we really work on supporting the liver pathway to support the gut signaling that needs to happen so we can be supporting our own GLP-1, right? Which will help us reduce cravings, overall reduce appetite, reduce food noise, help with more efficient um, insulin and blood sugar handling, and just get us, yeah, feeling good. Gosh, so I got ahead of myself. Here's my slide about GLP-1. So yeah, your body makes its own GLP-1. It is a hormone that we make. It's not just something you have to get through an Ozempic shot. Um, and it is what tells our body that we've had enough to eat, really helps us manage our insulin response and how we're taking glucose into the cells and being efficient about that. Does slow down digestion overall, so that yeah, we're not feeling hungry again quickly after eating. It's built in the microbiome, right? It's a gut hormone, and the healthier the balance of the gut microbiome, the more GLP-1 we have. Um, and and it does decrease as we get older, right? Especially the more insulin resistant we get. And I'm talking so much about insulin resistance because this really is I'm seeing more and more of it happening, and the liver is just is a huge component in management of it and getting the body to become efficient again. So I do find the medications, they do give the body that GLP-1. They sit on the receptor for that GLP-1, but I'm going to talk all about these lifestyle aspects that amplify a natural version of it. So I find that, yeah, a lot of times people hit the new year and they do an aggressive diet, or they're really calorie counting and they're minimizing how much food they're eating. And that might work short term, and they have a rapid weight loss. And I see this with the GLP-1 drugs too, right? Where you get rapid loss, but then you're losing muscle, right? Um, and the body's more likely to quickly rebound. And unfortunately, that's what they're seeing is folks when the folks go off the drugs. So they're talking more and more about these being long-term medications or life medications for people. And it's just, yeah, you're ignoring the hormone component. You're ignoring the liver lag that's happening. And what I mean by liver lag is the congestion that I've been talking about in terms of the congestion with hormones, movement of bile, clearance of toxins. Um, that if when the liver is lagging behind, um, you're gonna um, yeah, you're gonna stop eating in the more restrictive way, and they're not going to understand, well, why the weight just comes right back. And that is because, yeah, you haven't actually addressed the pathways that are clogged. So I want to talk about positive things you can do, right? And utilize your levers, we're going to call them, your levers to move yourself in the right direction. Um, and so one of the first things I want to talk about is actually eating earlier. If you're someone who's been, working on nutrition or particularly working on trying to be more metabolically adapted, you've probably heard something at least about intermittent fasting. And I am a fan of intermittent fasting. I do see that it works for people, but an interesting pattern is that I find that I want people eating earlier. It's common for folks to get into intermittent fasting and just start skipping breakfast. Um, but I do see that there's a circadian rhythm with eating, and that while I want to encourage people to do what's called time restricted eating, meaning have a shortened window throughout the day that you're consuming food, because this does decrease the liver fat buildup. It makes you more insulin sensitive. It supports your natural GLP-1. But if we bump that window to including breakfast, um, and eating, first thing in the day, that majorly stabilizes blood sugar. And I find that that's a huge part of dealing with the cortisol piece for folks, the stress hormone production. Because I see it a lot, especially with women, that they'll be pushing their body to fast. They might not even feel hungry, like it's really not seeming like a big deal to fast, but their body is not actually being more efficient. Like if we were to test their blood sugar during that time, their blood sugar would probably be trending higher. I went through a period of time where I was more aggressively tracking my blood sugar and tracking my ketones while I was doing fasting windows. And I really found that it didn't work for me to fast in the morning. So this part of this is sort of tried and true for my own experience, but I've seen it a lot with clients as well, that I had to eat breakfast and eat lunch, but I had to have an early dinner and not have anything after dinner, right? So I'd still be having potentially even a 14 to 15-hour fasting window throughout the night. But most of it was, I was fasting more in the evening versus waiting and having a delayed breakfast at 11 or at noon. Um, and it was just stressful on my body to do that. Um, yeah, and so it actually fits with the biology too. But if you are somebody who is currently skipping breakfast or is just eating late into the night, those are two things to be really aware of for stress on your liver. All right, and then my mantra is you always want to eat protein and fiber first. Um, so your protein and fiber really help you feel full, right? It supports your gut hormone balance. It's going to reduce any kind of what we call blood sugar spike after eating, which is really important if you are diabetic or pre-diabetic, but I find can be really balancing just for everyone, and particularly people who struggle with blood sugar balance because of the amount of stress that their body is under. And so in the order of operations, yeah, you want to do your protein, follow that with your fiber. And then if you are going to have anything that's sweeter, a dessert, or you say a piece of bread, right, you want to have that last. So you deconstruct your sandwich, you don't eat it all at the same time, and you eat in this order, it actually does change up how your body processes the nutrients and how high of a blood sugar spike that you're going to have. And a great resource about all of this is a book called The Glucose Revolution, where a lot of these principles were studied on folks wearing constant glucose monitors and trying to reduce the spiking that happen when they eat. Like it's normal for your blood sugar to rise with food, but we don't want it to do a rapid rise and then a rapid drop. And the more steady it is, the more steady you're going to feel, the less cravings you're going to have, and the less of a stressor it is on your body to then manage the hormones to respond to that. So a great example can be having eggs and veggies for breakfast, or an omelet or a scramble. Um, and you could mix in, if you want to get the protein number even a bit higher, then you could mix in some meat with that as well. Oh, I'm not being good at checking the chat for you guys. Sorry. I'll glance at that really quick. Okay, yeah, I can make sure I answer those questions. Thanks, Lydia. Yeah, so skip just to back up a tiny bit because Lydia's question was how is it stressful on the body to be skipping breakfast? It is stressful because you're not providing fuel for your system to be then managing your blood sugar and managing your hormones, right? And your adrenal glands play a big role in managing blood sugar for your body overall. And it does force you to be running more on stress hormones. It's a cortisol response. And so then just depending if you're somebody who is already struggling with too high or too low cortisol, it's going to be a stressor on your adrenal glands specifically to be skipping breakfast. And yeah, so we tend to see if we're tracking that with people, the body's not as efficient of keeping the blood sugar in a healthy range for a fasted range. So it just means you're not getting the benefits of fasting, right? Because when you're fasting, we'd really like you to have a healthy fasting glucose number, ideally in 80 to 90 range. But if the body's not efficiently able to fast because of the stress response of it being managed by cortisol, we're going to see it be in the 90s or be in the 100s. And yeah, and then it really just means you're not getting the metabolic benefit of fasting. And you'd be better off having a breakfast, not fasting, and having our body better balance your hormones from having those nutrients in your system. But that's talking about having a protein and fiber breakfast, right? You're going to see even further stress if you eat a breakfast of cereal or something like that, right? It's just something or that's just a sugar source for the body. All right, and then resistance training is a really important piece of helping with metabolic balance, and the building of muscle does help protect liver by decreasing liver fat buildup, which is also called visceral fat. And it's specifically resistance training. So it improves insulin resistance and it decreases the liver fat buildup. It is so important for preserving lean body mass compared to just cardio alone. So a lot of people are like, I got to exercise, but we're specifically talking about resistance work, weight training, and this is a big thing that's being found with folks who do better on the weight loss drugs too. Is that folks who are regular doing squats or moving their body weight or lifting weights are going to be uh, yeah, just metabolically much healthier and are going to be preserving their muscle mass, which is so important for just healthy aging and also long-term, yeah, metabolic balance. All right, you guys are asking some great questions. I might just have to finish what I'm talking about and start getting into those at the end. All right, but I will get to them. All right, and then some other levers that I think are really important is your sleep quality. So when you have poor sleep, you're going to have more cravings, and you specifically have more liver fat buildup. And it also just it ties into the stress component and the cortisol piece that I was talking about, right? So the more you, when you sleep poorly too, that also directly affects your cortisol pattern. And it's a normal cortisol flow to have your cortisol peak when you first get up, and then we want to just watch this curve that happens throughout the day. And so there is a saliva test that you can do that we can order through a company called Vibrant Wellness that can you take, a saliva sample 4 times throughout the day to get readings on that cortisol pattern, whether yours is spiking too high or actually is really not responding. You've been under high stress long enough that you're actually not even producing enough cortisol to be responding healthily. Um, but yeah, so you're if you're struggling with your sleep or you have poor sleep hygiene, you're looking at screens late at night or you're just not getting to bed at enough early enough or not allotting enough time in your life for sleep, you're going to see more stress on your liver and particularly see it harder to lose weight and harder to lose that specific liver fat. And then the flip side of it too is just if you are struggling with stress in your life or stress management, right? And you're then producing more cortisol, right? Or you have a body that's in that fight or flight state more than it should be, right? Ideally, we respond acutely to serious events, and then our body can relax back down again, right? But what is a huge problem in modern humans is that we perceive everything as stressful. And so our body just ends up being in this heightened go, 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 fight or flight response majority of the time. And there's never that relax, parasympathetic, rest and repair state, um, uh, unless we cultivate practices to remind our body that it is safe and that, our being on at our job and answering lots of phone calls shouldn't be the same stress response as in our genealogy of running away from a predator, right? And so I just find that it takes an active practice, whether for you that's walking, whether it's a yoga practice or a breath work practice, or there's interesting research behind just lying on your back on the floor and putting your feet up the wall, and that actually induces a parasympathetic response. Um, so there are many ways, but I just want to draw people's awareness that this is one of the levers, and it's one of the ways to support liver health and to support your metabolic efficiency overall. And you want to be getting about 7 to 9 hours of sleep every night. Yeah. And so if you're struggling with sleep, like not staying asleep or not able to fall asleep, right? That's a separate question, and we want to explore like, well, why is that happening in your body, and how can we help it to restore a healthy sleep cycle so that you can be getting that restorative sleep. So when I call it a smarter reset plan, it's because it's using these tactics all together, right? And utilizing what I call these levers all together. Um, using a very specific timing with eating of time restricted eating of that 10-hour window specifically to reduce liver fat, doing the protein first because it does increase GLP-1 response in the body, and that feeling full response, and it supports, as we talked about, blood sugar balance. It really makes breakfast a priority. Um, Doing the resistance training work because that increases your insulin sensitivity, and it's recommended based off of research 20 minutes at a time, 3 times a week. supporting your hormone balance through getting enough sleep and really working to build consistent patterns around that. And just being gently consistent, right? That's what is most sustainable. If you do work to do something rapid or gosh, a 3 day fast or whatnot, um, recognizing that the body might do something temporarily to reset, but it's these longer patterns where you track your small wins that build over time to really create the change that you're looking to see. Because I really find that it's not about willpower, right? Especially if you're someone who's been struggling after the holidays. The hormone piece and how the liver works with fat storage really just explains how you can't. It's not your fault, right? It's these processes that are happening. Um, but it's cool, the science that shows eating from that 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. window. It's a pretty healthy eating window, right? Unless, that cuts liver fat by 2 to 5% and boosts your own natural GLP-1. For me personally, I do, gosh, sometimes like nights like tonight, I'm probably not going to end up eating till after 7 for dinner. But I do like 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's my pattern. The proteins and greens first. Every meal starts with protein and fiber. Yeah, so it's just the fiber slows down the digestion of foods, just literally. Like it's so if there's actually a cool visual about this in the Glucose Revolution book, where you kind of can imagine a sink, and if you've got a drain in that sink, and you just if your sugar is your water and you just pour the water in, it's just going to shoot right down the drain, right? And so that's the analogy of that's just then quickly boosting your blood sugar. But if you've got the protein in there first and you've got the fiber in there first, you're creating some blockages in that drain, right? And so then when you pour in the water, it's going to move more slowly through the drain. And so the idea is that we slow down how our body is getting these faster carbohydrate foods. Um, we're going to slow down how quickly blood sugar spikes, and that's going to create an overall lower curve that is going to help us feel full longer, lessen cravings, and reduce stress on the body systems that are all adapting and responding through the nervous system to help us manage how we process food and how we process those nutrients and how we um, uh, manage the inflammatory response that can happen when blood sugar really jumps up and then everyone's trying to put on alarm bells and manage that. So I hope that helps, Brittany, you understand that a little bit better, but make sure if you still have questions, you let me know. All right. And then yes, reminding you just where the body training, that can be squats, it could be push-ups, it can be working with actual weights. It's the resistance work really ups your insulin resistance and helps protect your liver from that liver fat buildup. And so I challenge you to pick one, right? Each little step that we do builds upon itself, and and then you do one comes with more ease, and you can work in the next one. But this is a smarter way, big picture, to understand the connections of yeah of the role the liver is playing on not only your metabolic health, your weight management. Um, and how your body is balancing and clearing your hormones. Awesome. All right, so that's the end of my presentation. Let's see if there's any more questions. Thanks so much for joining me tonight. I was trying to keep it short, but I went a little over half an hour. Um, so let me just sort of look through what you guys are asking me. Go to the top and say, nice, okay. Okay. Well, Brittany, I hope I answered your question. Or yeah, so Jessica, your question is there a way to test for what length of a fast is best for us? And how do we and to boost the GLP-1? And yeah, I hear you about how to get your body out of that hibernation mode. I don't know of a test um, besides trial and error, unfortunately. But I do love Dr. Mindy Pelz's book, which is called Fast Like a Girl. And she really walks people through cycling fasting, particularly for women, matching it up with our menstrual cycle and using those stages of hormones to really have the most efficiency with fasting. And she also walks you through different lengths of fasts and things to try um, so that you can because I find that it's actually just shifting it up, changing it up is what can really help people. Um, Great. And then Judy, yeah, asking in terms of a male and under 30, is it different in terms of how intermittent fasting can work? I find that intermittent fasting is way less complicated for men because they don't have the same hormonal piece that women have with consideration. So it often can be really straightforward, where just have reducing the window of eating, whether that be um, they want to do that 9 to 7 like I was talking about, or they want to do um, delayed breakfast. I find it's not as particular. It's just for them, it's what feels good, and they start seeing results. So I have a lot of male clients who get great results just by skipping breakfast. I'll be honest. So it's much more of a women specific thing to be talking about the breakfast component. But in general, like intermittent fasting was originally studied on men. Um, Dave Asprey, who is a biohacker, has written a lot of books, but he wrote a book called Fast This Way, which was one of the first books on intermittent fasting. And it was originally recommended to get yourself to about 17 hours of fasting 3 times a week. And that was really the initial thing that a lot of men were doing and seeing great results. And then it started as we started diving more into seeing women practicing it, is that we started to see more of the complications from hormones and wanting to understand better what would be suited for different women. All right, Doris, so your question about what's the main cause of poor bile flow. Oh gosh, I find that yeah, the poor bile flow can be caused from a lot of factors. For many people, it's been since the introduction of what I call industrial fats and how hard they are to avoid. And so that is your canola oils, particularly the increased usage of soy oil, um, and just how much that is in put into so many foods used in restaurants and hard to avoid, and they just take a really long time for our body to break down. I apologize that I'm not remembering the number right now, but I just know sugar. See, sugar is just broken down so much more quickly. You can clear sugar out of your body within days, whereas fats, these types of fats, we're talking about it taking months to clean out. And then if you're getting little low grade exposures constantly, even if you're working to avoid them, right? But it's just eating out at that restaurant or happening to snack on some chips that have some of these oils in them, there's just going to be, yeah, that that sluggishness, and then it just builds. The more sluggish your bile is, um, then yeah, there's poor clearance of toxins, particularly mold exposure and mycotoxins is very specifically slows down the bile. And we recycle a lot of our bile. Our body's very smart. It doesn't want to like keep making it anew. Um, and mycotoxins can stay attached to the bile molecules as they are recycled and remade. So you just get this buildup of congestion, and then that poor bile flow can also then attract dysbiosis, right? It can contribute to there being overgrowth of certain bacterias or overgrowth of certain parasites. So you can just have, unfortunately, over the years and over a time, a real sluggishness that builds. Um, and then high estrogen too, whether that's from the individual body making too much estrogen, but more than likely is exposure to xenoestrogens, right? So that's the amount of plastics we're exposed to, BPA specifically, a lot of herbicides and insecticides, um, though they all induce more estrogen in the body as well, and estrogen particularly influences bile flow as well. So we get hit from all sides, um, and for sure, detoxing is important, especially if we can identify, is it specifically mold that you need to clear? Or do you need more support specifically with the estrogen? But I do find that as much as we can identify the source of what has created the sluggishness so much for the individual, identifying the nutrients that are really for that individual are going to help move the bile. Um, and yeah, helping the body release it is what makes the most difference. And that's where I find, I mean, as you know, but I find that the nutrition response testing really shines because it just helps us to customize it so much. Um, but the vibrant wellness testing has also been adding a really valuable piece to this, for some of my clients, because there's a test called the hormone zoomer that Vibrant offers, that's a urine test, and it's testing these urine metabolites for estrogens and progesterones and testosterones. But it also tests a lot of the xenoestrogen chemicals. And so then we can really get a picture of how the liver is working, how it's clearing the estrogens, and what's contributing to why it's so bogged down. And it can highlight with what pathways are not working well, can really highlight where we need to focus nutritionally as well. So that was probably a longer explanation than you were looking for, but and then yes, your question about the how important circadian rhythm is. I see, yes, I very much see that. I see that circadian rhythm is very important for healing stress response with the body, particularly um, what I was talking about in terms of the body's perception of its own safety. As we talked, it's so important in terms of healthy sleep cycles, and because that's when so much of liver detoxification cycles are run in the middle of the night. Um, and Yeah, I find it's very important for a healthy hormone balance, particularly in this specific dynamic I see with menopausal and postmenopausal women in this modern age of high stress hormones. Yeah. And great. All right. Gosh. Well, now listen to me talk. It's now 6:20. So thank you so much for joining me, everyone. I hope I got your questions answered. If not, you know, um, you know where to find me. Please just reach out to Nutritional Wellness Center, phone, email, text, and we can get things more customized to you and get you some more specific answers. Oh, yeah. And Lydia, so just a last little thing, a simple suggestion, adding resistance. Yeah, you're so welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me. Um, yeah, so absolutely. Loading up a backpack and walking. There's this whole fad now of weighted vests. So you can literally buy, yeah, vests with 10 to 15 pounds worked into them and just walk with those. And those are being recommended more and more for women who want the resistance for prevention of osteoporosis. But you could create that in any kind of way. And then I think the simplest things you can do at home are squats, right? Where yeah, you're just using your own body weight as your resistance. And push-ups are another one too. All right. Until next time, everyone. Thank you so much.